I was still wearing my hospital bracelet when he kissed my forehead, told me to rest, and promised to take care of everything. I believed him. How could I not? I had just given birth to our daughter, and in my vulnerable, exhausted state, I trusted that my husband would protect us. But 3 weeks later, I woke from a nap to find my baby gone. Gone. No note. No message. Just an empty crib and a phone call that changed everything. "She's safe," he said, his voice cold, "with someone who deserves her." My legs gave out. My vision went black. I screamed until my throat bled. And still, no one came. He had given our child away. To her. His mistress. His infertile lover. And somehow, impossibly, legally, he had the documents to prove it. He had stolen my child. And done it with a calm, calculated cruelty I never saw coming. Before it all collapsed, I thought we were happy. Not the fairy tale kind of happy. No, but the kind where you smile at each other over morning coffee, talk about school zones and bedtime routines. We'd waited years to have a baby. I'd even frozen embryos. He was patient, supportive, at least on the surface. When I got pregnant, he cried with joy. Or so I thought. But the cracks came fast after our daughter was born. He distanced himself, stopped coming home, blamed stress, work, the baby's crying. I chalked it up to adjustment, postpartum fog. I was exhausted and focused on breastfeeding, diapers, healing. I didn't realize he was grooming the moment. He'd already laid the groundwork, isolating me, handling paperwork, keeping me too overwhelmed to question the fine print. By the time I noticed something was off, I was already legally cornered. And by then, it was too late. She was the woman I'd met twice. Once at his office holiday party. Once when she showed up uninvited to a charity event we hosted. I remember her handshake. Dry, possessive. Her smile was too sweet, too studied. At the time, I thought she was just overly friendly. I didn't know she had been by his side for years, lurking in shadows, desperate for the one thing I had, the ability to give him a child. She was infertile, yes, but calculating. She knew the law had connections, and had wrapped herself around his ambition. Together, they plotted a future that erased me. She moved into a second home he'd secretly bought, decorated a nursery that mirrored mine, and when I was sedated after my emergency C-section, they made their move. My signature on a temporary guardianship form, fraudulent, photocopied, maybe even forged, but it held up. By the time I understood the truth, she was already calling herself Mommy. I called the police first, then a lawyer, then a child protection hotline. No one could help me. The documents check out. They said, it's a civil matter. They said, I showed them my hospital records, the photos of me and my baby, the messages he'd sent, but none of it mattered. My name had been removed from certain documents without my consent. He claimed I was unstable post-birth, that I had agreed to a break, that I needed time to recover. I was stunned by how easy it was for a man to frame a woman as irrational, especially after childbirth. No one questioned him. Everyone questioned me. My daughter was just a few weeks old, and I was being treated like a trespasser in my own motherhood. Every system I turned to closed a door in my face. I had never felt so powerless or so terrifyingly alone. I tried to see her, just once. I drove to their house, the one he bought for her, decorated for her, gave our child to her. When she opened the door, she smiled like she'd won something. She stood there in yoga pants, holding my baby like a trophy. She's happy here, she said softly. You really should take care of yourself. I lunged forward before I could stop myself, begging, crying, collapsing to my knees. I wasn't violent. I was desperate. Still, she called the police. I was escorted off the property like a criminal. My own daughter looked at me with wide, confused eyes, and then turned away when the other woman whispered her name. It broke something in me. I curled up in my car, and screamed into the steering wheel. She was erasing me. And my husband, no, my ex, was helping her do it, one lie at a time. He told our mutual friends I was spiraling, that I had postpartum psychosis, that I refused to take medication, that I was a threat to our daughter. At first, they reached out with concern. Are you okay? But it quickly shifted to judgment. Invitations stopped. Messages went unanswered. Even my mother hesitated when I called, asking if maybe I had signed something. You've always been forgetful, she whispered. My world tilted. If even my own mother doubted me, what chance did I have? I stopped leaving the house. I stopped eating. I watched videos of my daughter on social media. Yes, they posted her like a prize. Her face always turned toward the woman I'd never be. I couldn't sleep without hearing her cry in my dreams. I whispered lullabies into an empty crib. And every day, I died a little more, wondering if she would grow up forgetting the sound of my voice. The worst part wasn't losing her. It was the idea that she might grow up loving them more, that every moment we missed would be rewritten. First words I'd never hear. First steps I'd never see. Her world, slowly edited to remove me. He even had her name changed. Just slightly, but enough to feel like a slap. And every legal route I tried circled back to the same stone wall. Guardianship had already been transferred. I was labeled unstable. I had no proof of forgery. The notary was a friend of his. The witness was her cousin. I sat in front of a judge, once shaking, with a binder full of evidence. And she looked at me like I was delusional. I left the courtroom, humiliated, heartbroken, and burning with a rage that had no place to go. That's when I stopped begging for justice and started building a different kind of war. It began with one phone call to a woman I once helped escape an abusive marriage. She was a lawyer now, fierce, brilliant, and furious when she heard what happened. Don't ask for mercy, she told me. Take everything. She assembled a team: family law, forensic specialists, digital recovery experts. We dug through everything: emails, signatures, hospital records, voice memos. Piece by piece, we constructed the case he thought I was too broken to make. We tracked down the notary, who witnessed my signature. She cracked after one conversation. I was pressured, she said. They said she needed a break. The pieces started to fall like dominoes. My voice was still shaky. My heart still shattered. But I had fire in my veins again. This time, I wasn't just a grieving mother. I was a mother at war. I changed everything. I stopped crying in the dark and started preparing in the light. Therapy twice a week. Journaling every night. Meditation, legal coaching, even voice training, so I could testify without trembling. I moved out of the house that smelled like memories and into a small apartment with bare walls and hope. And I stopped looking at pictures of my daughter with bitterness. I started looking at her with promise. I'm coming back, I'd whisper to the screen. And when I do, you'll know who your mother really is. I joined support groups, met women with stories that mirrored mine. We lifted each other. I wasn't alone anymore. I was learning, healing, planning. And then one day, I saw her again, by chance at a bookstore. She turned, recognized me, and before she could run, I bent down and said the words that made her freeze. Do you remember my voice? She blinked at me, small, unsure, just a flicker. Then she looked toward the woman beside her, clutching her hand too tightly. I didn't push. I didn't plead. I just smiled and said, I'm your mama, and I'm not going anywhere again. And I walked away, not because I was giving up, but because the next time we met, I would be ready, and they would never see it coming. The lawsuit made headlines. Mother sues ex-husband for child trafficking allegations. They called it, I didn't care about the public scrutiny. Let them talk. Let them dissect my pain across social media and morning talk shows. Every word spoken in judgment was one more reminder of why I needed to win. He tried to silence me with threats, legal countersuits, character assassination, even a fake mental health report. But this time, I had everything documented. Every lie, every manipulation, every forged form. My lawyer filed motions with surgical precision. We subpoenaed their texts, unearthed burner phones, dug up payments made to the fake notary. It wasn't just about getting my daughter back. It was about making sure they could never do this to anyone else. And for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar pressing against the edges of my grief. Power, and a sense of justice sharpening in my bones. He didn't see it coming. The court ordered a forensic psychological evaluation for him, and when the results came back, they painted a very different picture. Narcissistic traits, control issues, emotional volatility masked by charm. His mask cracked in public. On the third day of trial, he lost his temper in front of the judge, shouting, blaming, trying to claim I was manipulating the system. But this time, no one believed him. I stayed calm, measured. I answered every question with quiet precision, never letting the tremor in my voice betray me. And when they asked why I waited so long to fight back, I told the truth. Because when a mother loses a child, she first grieves like she's dead. But then she rises. That quote ended up in the papers. And in that moment, I realized I had already begun to reclaim something much bigger than custody. My name. She was still calling the mistress, Mommy. It ripped me open every time I heard it. But my therapist reminded me, not every bond made in trauma is meant to last. Your daughter didn't choose this. She said she was conditioned. And deep down, I knew that. I remembered the lullabies I used to hum while rocking her, the way she curled her fingers around mine in the hospital. Those weren't things that could be erased. Not truly. But I had to be patient. I couldn't demand her love back like a transaction. I had to earn her trust all over again, brick by brick. So I started sending letters. Stories written just for her, filled with little clues from her infancy, favorite colors, secret nicknames. The smell of lavender I used to rub on her feet, whether she read them or not. I didn't care. I was building a bridge, one she'd one day cross. When the ruling came down, I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and let the silence wrap around me. Full maternal custody. Her legal name restored. Supervised visitation for him, pending further review. And as for the mistress, a restraining order. The judge called it an egregious abuse of trust and maternal rights. I had waited years for that sentence. It felt like thunder finally breaking after a lifetime of drought. But the reunion wasn't a scene from a movie. My daughter didn't run into my arms. She looked at me with guarded eyes, confused and cautious. I held out my hand and said, "No pressure, just time." And we sat together on a park bench, watching the ducks, not saying much. But she didn't move away. She let me braid her hair. And that was enough, for now. I didn't need her to remember everything. I just needed her to know I never stopped trying. She asked about him. Of course she did. Why did Daddy lie? Her voice was small, uncertain. I paused. Every bone in my body wanted to scream, to expose the monster behind the mask. But I didn't. I said, "Some people lie when they're scared of losing what they never earned." She thought about that for a long time. "Did you stop loving me?" she asked next. And that's when I broke. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but I smiled. "Never. Even when I didn't know where you were. I loved you every single minute." She laid her head on my shoulder. And in that quiet, I realized something powerful. Love, when unbroken by cruelty, can still find its way home. It may not be loud or fast, but it's steady. And in that moment, I felt her heart leaning just a little closer to mine. That was how healing began. He tried one last time, showed up at a mediation meeting with flowers and a smug grin. as if he could charm his way out of years of destruction. "We used to be great together," he said. "You don't have to make this ugly." I looked at him like a stranger. "You made it ugly when you handed our child over like a gift to someone else." He didn't know how to respond. I no longer spoke in pleas or sorrow. I spoke in verdicts. I walked out without looking back. I didn't need revenge anymore. His empire was crumbling on its own. Lawsuits, fraud investigations, professional disgrace. He had used my money to fund her lifestyle. And now, I was suing him for every cent. I would rebuild, not just emotionally, but financially, legally, spiritually. Every dollar he stole would be reclaimed. Every lie he told would be unspun. And every part of me would rise again. She started calling me Mom again, slowly, not all at once. Sometimes just Ma. Other times she'd forget and say her name instead. But she noticed my face didn't flinch. I just kept showing up. At school events, in her stories, on rainy weekends with pancakes and board games. One evening, she asked me to braid her hair before bed. And halfway through, she turned to whisper, "Do you remember the butterfly song?" I froze, then nodded, and we sang it together just like we used to. No one recorded it. No one posted it. It wasn't proof for the court or a photo op. It was ours. Pure, quiet, private. For the first time in years, I tucked her into bed in my home, her home. And she didn't cry for the other woman. She just asked if I'd be there in the morning. I promised her I would. And this time, I meant it. I didn't expect forgiveness. Not from my daughter, not even from myself. But I gave us both space to grieve. I grieved the years I lost, the birthdays I missed, the lullabies I sang into an empty room. And I grieved the version of me that thought love meant blind loyalty. She grieved, too, in her own way. Quiet questions, sudden anger, silent stares. But I didn't rush her. I told her the truth in pieces. Only when she asked, never more than she could carry. "You were never unwanted." I told her, "You were stolen, but now you're home." That word, home, meant something different now. It wasn't tied to a place or a legal paper. It was tied to the warmth of her laugh, the way she leaned into my side when we watched movies. We weren't perfect, but we were healing. And healing, I realized, is just love returned to its rightful place. I never changed my number, just in case. And one day, months later, it happened. The mistress called. Her voice was hollow, shaking. "She asks for you now," she said. "She doesn't call me Mom anymore." I didn't gloat. I didn't curse her. I just listened. She cried. "I didn't think she'd remember you." I replied, "I never needed her to remember me. I just needed her to know I never left." She asked if I hated her. I didn't answer. Some questions aren't meant to be honored. I hung up, blocked the number, and never answered again. She had tried to steal motherhood. But motherhood isn't just biology. It's presence. It's consistency. It's unconditional love. Even in silence. I was never absent. I was just forced away. And now, the space she tried to fill with lies was emptying, not because I tore it down, but because the truth was strong enough to reclaim it. He sent me a letter from prison, handwritten, sloppy, like he knew typing it would make it too easy. He said he was sorry, said he made mistakes, that he never meant to hurt me or her. But the worst part, he still never admitted the truth. He danced around it like he always did, writing about misguided intentions and emotional confusion. There was no remorse, just performance. I didn't write back. I burned the letter. I didn't need closure from a man who never truly opened himself to anything but control. My closure was waking up every morning to the sound of my daughter humming in the kitchen. My closure was in knowing she was safe, loved, seen. I used to think healing would come when he broke, but it didn't. Healing came the day I stopped needing anything from him at all. especially his version of forgiveness. One afternoon, I picked her up from school, and she ran to me, ponytail bouncing, backpack half-zipped. "Guess what?" she grinned. "We had to draw our families in class today." My breath caught. I asked, "What did you draw?" She shrugged. "Us. You, me, and Jason." Jason, the man who had stood by me these last few months. Patient, kind, never trying to replace, just support. He never asked for the title of dad, but he earned something close. "Is that okay?" she asked, chewing her lip. I smiled through the tears I didn't even try to hide. "It's more than okay." And when she took my hand and pulled me toward the car, chattering about her science project, I realized I had lost everything once. But what I rebuilt was stronger, kinder, more sacred than anything that had come before. This family, this imperfect, hard-won love, was finally mine. People asked how I survived. I never had an answer that felt big enough. But I always started with this. I stopped believing pain made me noble. For years, I thought endurance was the same thing as strength, that if I just stayed quiet, held the marriage together, tolerated the betrayals, it made me good. But it didn't. It made me disappear. And when I reappeared, bruised but breathing, I understood that real strength isn't how much you can take. It's how fiercely you can protect your soul once you remember it still matters. I wasn't just a mother or a wife or a victim. I was a woman who reclaimed every part of herself, piece by agonizing piece. I sued him not just for what he did to me, but for every woman told to sit down and stay small. And I won. That truth lives in me now, solid as bone. The house feels different now. The walls that once echoed with silence now hum with laughter, piano practice, the occasional slammed door. Real life. Messy, vibrant, alive. On Sunday mornings we make pancakes. She insists on adding sprinkles. Jason pretends to be annoyed, but he always eats the colorful ones first. I hang her artwork on the fridge, proudly crooked. And sometimes when the sun hits just right and the kitchen smells like cinnamon, I let myself feel it fully. Peace. Not the kind that comes after revenge, but the kind that blooms after survival. I don't dream of the past anymore. I don't rehearse old arguments in my head. I live, fully, loudly, presently. And in that presence, I've found something sacred. Joy without fear. Love without loss attached. A second chance at motherhood, not as a role, but as a purpose, and I don't take a single second of it for granted. I speak now, at women's shelters, court reform panels, parenting conferences. I tell my story, not because it's unique, but because it's not. Too many women have been erased in their own marriages. Too many children are used like bargaining chips by narcissists in suits. I tell them, you are not crazy, you are not weak, and you are absolutely not alone. Sometimes I show them the scar on my shoulder, the one from the night I fell trying to chase down a car, taking my daughter away. That scar, I say, is not a mark of failure. It's proof I ran. And that's what matters, that we run toward the fire, not away, that we stop apologizing for the pain others caused us, and that we rise, broken, bent, but not buried. Every word I speak, every eye that meets mine, reminds me the voice they tried to silence is louder than ever now. Last week, she called me from school and said, "Mom, can Jason come to career day?" I paused. "Of course," I said, voice tight. "Why him?" "Because," she replied, "he shows up like you." That night, I watched them laugh over takeout, her little feet tucked under his, like it had always been this way. I didn't need to replace the father she lost. I just needed to surround her with people who loved her right, who never made her feel like a prize to be won or a burden to be handed off. And as I sipped my tea, I realized she didn't just get a second chance at childhood. I got a second chance at giving it. This time, I wouldn't miss birthdays. I wouldn't cry alone in locked bathrooms. I'd be here every messy, chaotic moment, fully present, fully real. And that, to me, is everything I ever wanted. I still keep the court ruling in a drawer, not because I need proof, but because I like knowing it's real. Sometimes I open it and just stare at the words, full custody granted, parental rights terminated. The finality of it grounds me. It's over, legally, emotionally, but I'll never forget. I'll never forget the cold chair in the waiting room, the sound of my daughter's voice calling someone else mom, the way betrayal blooms like rot, slow, then all-consuming. But I also won't forget the look in her eyes the night she finally reached for my hand and didn't pull away. That's what keeps me going. Not revenge, not righteousness, but the quiet, sacred victory of being trusted again, loved again, seen again. I lost 10 years of her life, but I gained every day after. And I promise you, what we build now is not just recovery. It's resurrection. The old me would have faded back into comfort by now, smiled for photos, said she was blessed. But not this version. This version of me demands space, tells the full truth, fights for women like me who were silenced for years behind pastel wedding photos and court-enforced gag orders. I don't fear being called too much anymore. I fear going back to being not enough. So I speak. I rage. I hold space for joy and sorrow in the same breath. Because that's what survival looks like. It's not always pretty, but it's honest. And I've learned that honesty is its own kind of beauty. It's the kind that doesn't fade under scrutiny. It gets stronger, like my daughter's laugh, like my own spine, like the sound of my voice, steady, scarred, and unstoppable. And if you've ever been broken by betrayal, hear me now. Your voice matters too. Let it be heard. One night, she asked me if we could visit the ocean. I want to see where the sky touches the water, she said. So we went, just the two of us. We stood at the edge, toes buried in sand, hair tangled in salt and wind. And as the waves roared in front of us, she whispered, "I don't feel scared when I'm with you." That was it. That was everything. Not a dramatic reunion, not a grand apology, just that one line, and the trust it carried. We stood there for a long time, fingers entwined. I watched the horizon shift colors and thought, maybe healing looks like this. Quiet, steady, vast. Maybe the best kind of justice isn't served in a courtroom, but in moments like these, where love feels louder than loss, where a child chooses you back, where the past no longer dictates the view, just the tide, moving forward. If you felt this story in your heart, please like and subscribe. Every voice lifted helps others find theirs. And if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, remember, you're not starting over. You're starting stronger.